Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ghost Education 101. Tonight, you guys recognize my guest. I have the Haunted Librarian joining me for another fantastic presentation. I know a lot of you were like, yay, I love the Haunted Librarian, so make sure you have those questions ready for her. So how have you been?
I've been doing well. How have you been?
I've been good. Good. So haunted houses. I'm kind of curious about this one because I know I'll make posts like, should you go to a haunted house for Halloween? And everybody's like, no, you never go to a haunted house. And it's like, well, I don't think they remembered the question. It's like when we were kids going to those old haunted houses where you run through and scream.
And they've changed a lot.
Right. Yes.
Right. And so, but I will tell you that after researching for this, I don't think I will ever do a carnival ride ever again. And I'm not talking roller coaster. I'm talking about the enclosed wall of mirrors kind of thing. Never again. I don't.
How about the Gravitron?
No, I wouldn't do that either. I am such a little chicken now.
So in your presentation today, the one question I do have is, are you covering any of the little haunted houses that actually are haunted?
I am not.
Okay.
Because so the premise of it, we started looking at how haunted houses used to be forms of fundraising for charities, charitable organizations. And so that was where I started with was, should you plan a fundraiser by creating a haunted house?
Yep.
And I'm not going to give away the answer.
I'm curious to see what that is. But we have Anthony joining us and Nick's. Hello, Anthony and Nick. And Nick says, yes, the JCs. I remember those growing up.
Oh, it is the JCs. It would be.
It's funny. You never heard about them all year long. And then Halloween came around and they were everywhere.
Oh, right. And so entrenched in it in terms of that was their money raiser, fundraiser. Same with March of Dimes. And it's just because people, we like to be scared, and we like haunted houses, and we like them as attractions. Love them as attractions. The industry is, I think it's like a $300 million industry on haunted houses. So if you have a location and you can obtain and follow some of the tips I have at the end, it's a moneymaker, especially when you don't hire people, you just have volunteers.
Right.
You can make a lot of money, but you have to treat it like a business. Yeah. Just like everything.
That's the sad part, is not everybody does what you or I would do and do all the deep research into. I mean, there's so many things that I want to do and I see other people doing it. But then when I look into it, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
No, I know, right? It's like,
there's too many legalities.
I'll pay a little bit extra and go to the business.
Actually, Anthony has a quick question before we get started. And being that you're a librarian, he wants to know, can books hold spirit energy with the pages?
So the book doesn't hold the spirit energy. It's something using the book to hold the energy would be how I approach it. Like, I don't think that you have necessarily a haunted object that's inherently haunted by itself. Something else is making it do the things it's doing. And that something could be actually somebody who used to be alive and is dead. It could be that type of spirit, or it could be like a demon that might not have been earthbound, or any type of elementals really aren't like that, but elementals were never human. And so something that wasn't human that can wrestle up its energy to do something. So I think that energy can be trapped within a book if the entity is making it be trapped in the book.
Yep.
That's just my opinion.
That's how I would have explained it.
So,
okay. But
it was a great question.
Yeah. And if you guys have any questions throughout the presentation, I will flag them and mark them so that way we make sure we cover them at the end. But whenever you want to get started, if there's anything you want to say beforehand, or if you just want to dive right in.
Let's dive right in, because it is the season, and I'm in my PJs tonight because it's like telling ghost stories, and it's raining in Florida, and I'm like, whew, it's a little chilly. We're getting a little bit of that fall air, and so what is fall but haunted houses and pumpkins, pumpkin spice and haunted houses. So it's been so long that I'm trying to remember how to share my screen.
That's fine. I know ever since it turned to October, like almost every day I get Starbucks notifications from my Starbucks app telling me, don't forget to get your pumpkin spice.
It's like, yeah, you got to come. And why not? Right.
Yep.
Okay. So let's see. Okay, perfect. You can see the start of it. And so let's get spooky. And so, like I said before, the premise was in terms of fundraising and creating this business and the business module of haunted houses. But first, we need to have a little bit of history of how the haunted house came about. And actually, I'm not going back into ancient times because there have been haunted houses, and in terms of a house having a spirit, I'm talking about the attractions and the entertainment value of a haunted house. And so we're going to talk about the early history, and then we're going to talk about the commercial haunted houses, which are big business, and then also the anti-Halloween houses, and then charity houses, and then the tragic story of the haunted castle. And so again, houses being haunted centuries. But I'm talking about it in terms of an attraction. And so in the United States, during the Great Depression, there was a lot of people who had a lot of time on their hands. And so they would be out at Halloween, and they would be out at different times of the year also, but there was an uptick in vandalism and pranking. And so early haunted houses actually came out of the Great Depression. There were some beforehand, but in the United States, it came out of the Great Depression as a form of entertainment so that you had predominantly these groups of kids and young adults, and you would entice them into these haunted houses to scare them or to entertain them, to keep them busy so they weren't out destroying the community. But the first documented haunted house is actually in Liphook, England. And in 1915, Orton and Spooner, they built steam engines, and they created fairground, like circus rides. So it was fairground rides, and they manufactured them, and they opened the first ghost house, and it's also known as a ghost cottage or the haunted cottage also. And it was built by Patrick Collins, who grew up in the circus. And so you're going to see a picture of it, and it does have kind of like that circus vibe going on. It has since been restored, and it is located in Hollycombe Working Steam Museum, and it is a museum. It's actually not just a building, it's an entire campus of steam-driven rides, fairground rides, and different types of history of the kind of like anything steam-driven in England. And the Hollycombe Working Steam Museum is the largest traditional fairground attraction in the world. So you can see old fairground circus-like attractions. And it kind of, like when you look at this, it's been restored. They've tried to take it back to what it used to look like. But, unfortunately, a lot of times you can't do that. But it does have that circus kind of feel with the skeleton and the pig-nosed man there and the colors with the roof and everything. And it was very popular. And what they did was they created this enclosed structure and devise things to scare you, to get that adrenaline going. Then in the United States in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, we had magicians, and magicians would take their show and they would travel across the nation, and it would be a ghost show or a creep show. So if any of you are horror movie enthusiasts, you know that a very popular franchise with the creep show, well, the name is attributed to these ghost shows where you had magicians who would travel the country, and they were large scale theatrical productions. And you have to remember, they didn't have television, and so people went to the theater and the movie theater and the playhouse. And so this was kind of a hybrid of that movie type magic with the magic acts, with a little bit of seance thrown in, and they ruled the late nights across the United States. And they were very popular and they were very lucrative. Magicians would make a lot of money, in the thousands of dollars during the fall season, the Halloween season, by doing these performances. And so here's a picture of a still from one such ghost show where they would have, like these zombies, and it's roadside, right? Roadside attractions. But instead of it being on the side of the road, it was inside a theater, and it was at night, and it would run several nights, and then they would pack up and move to the next town, and people look forward to it. Then we have the attractions, kind of like a diverse selection of them. And so they could be, the haunted attractions could be houses, they could be pop-up attractions. So you would have like these magic shows. They could be in barns, you would have hedges or mazes, closed prisons, closed asylums, anywhere where they could put up some props, do a little painting, hire some people or get some people to volunteer and stand in the shadows and scare people. And it has grown into big dollars, big dollars. Then we have probably one of the most iconic attractions, and this isn't a roadside attraction. This is Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. And so on August 9th, 1969, the Haunted Mansion opened in Disneyland, and it was a huge success. This was like the #1 attraction in the park when it opened, and they could actually tell and by the gate counts, but also they had the ticket books, and so it was like an e-ticket ride. It was the best ride was the Haunted Mansion. And what's interesting is that Walt Disney originally didn't want a haunted mansion because he didn't want a rundown house, and so they took instead his the Imagineers came up with this gorgeous house and kind of sold him, pitched it to him this way, because this is like a house you would see in New Orleans or up in the Northeast, like in New York City with the ironworks and everything. And so it's a gorgeous house, and people would come in and just be mesmerized by the illusion. The House of Illusions, that's what it is. And then another very successful ride, or actually this is more like an area, is the Knott's Berry Farm. And Walter and Cordelia Knott opened a roadside, this started as a roadside berry stand in 1923, where they sold their jams and their berries, and then they started canning them, and then they opened up a diner where Cordelia made a chicken dinner. And from that, it grew into this theme park. And so Paul von Kleben created the ghost town at Knott's Berry Farm. And what he did was he went, and this is out west, and he went and explored all the old ghost towns. And Heather knows a lot about this because this is one of her books, is about these types of ghost towns out in the West. So he went, he researched, and he drafted this ghost town. And it is incredibly successful. Every year they have the Halloween themed. A little side note is when Walter and Cordelia Knott passed away, the heirs, their children, inherited Knott's Berry Farm. And when they sold it for $300 million. And it started as a berry stand. Isn't that fabulous in California? But we know famous haunted houses, right? Depending on where you live, you might have Netherworld, you have the 13th floor, you have Halloween nights at Universal. Disney does a Disney Halloween event because they know that Halloween is a moneymaker. That's why we have the horror movies. Horror movies as a genre, moneymaker, because we love this sense of being scared. And these are kind of like at the one end of the spectrum where this is big dollar. The effects, I mean, Mothman in the Netherworld picture, he was not cheap to create. And we kind of have gotten to where we kind of expect this high end, expensive type of feel. But the roots of the haunted house were very simple indeed. And you didn't really need a lot to actually decorate the house. You might have a skeleton, you could have a ghost. Clowns were very popular theme, still popular theme in haunted houses of scaring people. But you have the growth in the industry of Halloween and all of this income that it generates. And so then, of course, you're going to have somebody who comes along and decides they're going to make it for good. So we have the charity fundraisers. And so as I can't remember if it was Anthony or who said the JCs, right? The United States Junior Chamber they're known as the JCs. And so they started in the late 1960s of creating and building these charity haunted houses. And they would be local chapters throughout the country would have a local junior chamber, have the JCs, and they had committees and they're volunteers. And it was their annual drive. It was, again, a big moneymaker for them. And we still actually have some who are still doing this today. But Tom Hilligoss actually created a manual on a how-to guide on how to run and create a successful and profitable haunted house. And so that's why you still see them in towns. I haven't seen them personally because where I live, I guess they've moved on to other fundraisers, but out in the Midwest, there are some, and this is an image of one, their haunted house. And you can see it's simple, some paint, some lettering and creative imaginations. And so you don't need to have millions of dollars and all of these lights and optics for the illusion and everything. You can have a very simple structure, but do you want to? But then we also have the hell houses. And I wanted to bring these up because just like when you see something good, it's fascinating me because when I didn't realize really what these were at first, because when you see Scaremare is the picture here and you see it and it's like, oh, it's just like another haunted house, but it's not. In 1972, Jerry Falwell and Liberty University, the moral majority, came up with their version of the anti-haunted house. And so we have the hell houses, and the hell houses premise is that you're going to be scared, but you're going to be scared because your morals, it was moral instruction because you were a sinner and you were a bad person. And so you're going to hell. And it would tell you all of these ways that you're going to hell. And then at the end of it, not to give the spoiler away, but at the end of the ride is heaven, where, if you turn around now, you will be saved and you will be lifted up to heaven. And this is such hypocrisy because what they're doing is it's based on haunted houses and they're making money. They're profiting off of it by trying to scare you in a different way. And they're still around. They popped up. I don't see any in Alachua County in Gainesville where I live, but up in Atlanta, they have several. And it was just fascinating to me because I never really could kind of get my mind around it because it seemed so hypocritical. But they're run by evangelical Protestants or the parachurch organizations, which I think is an interesting label in itself as well. So should you host a haunted house? And so my short answer is no. Don't do it. Don't do it. And there are a lot of reasons why. And I'm kind of surprised that the JCs and the March of Dimes and other organizations still kind of have the haunted house as a structure. Now, I'm not talking about like the cornfields when they put you on the back of the tractor and they take you out. The liability is much lower than actually having a structure. And so the cautionary tale, and this is really where we see the end of most charities getting out of the haunted house fundraiser business. And it's because of this horrible, tragic story of the haunted castle and the liability and the criminal liability, civil liability, and just how tragic it is. And so the haunted castle was at Six Flags Great Adventure, and it was in New Jersey, and it was in Jackson Township in New Jersey. And here is a picture of it. And I couldn't really do this justice in terms of being able to describe just how tragic this story is. And so I'm going to do something that I've never done before. Is I'm actually going to play you a YouTube video. It's about 13 minutes long, and it's actually really good about the structure and talking about it. And so I'm going to flip screens, and then I'm going to talk about the highlighted things to pull out from the cautionary tale. So let me go back to here and share my screen to a different screen. Of course, I'm like looking for how do I share my screen? It's down at the bottom. I know, right? It's like, oh. And then we're going to go to.
And it's funny, you caught me just as I got up to go grab a brownie.
Oh, no, not a brownie. See, that's better. Have a bake sale. Do the bake sale with the little ghosts on top or the candy corn instead of having the house. So Let me play this to get through and then jump 2-minute mark. 2:15.
Castle across the moat.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
Known as Haunted Castle for short, it opened in 1979, just one season after its predecessor, Haunted House, closed. To enter the all-new Haunted Castle, guests walked on a bridge over a moat toward the attraction's towering facade. Once inside, guests walked either left or right into one of two near-identical paths. The main difference was that the two sides were mirrored from each other. By having two sides, the attraction doubled its capacity, with the left side being known as the blue side and the right side being known as the red side. The castle's interior was intense and intimidating, with a foreboding soundtrack playing, strobe lights flashing, and fog filling the air. The walkthrough experience featured various frightening themes and characters with amusement park level quality sets. The first scene guests saw was a rat lady followed by a butcher scare in the same hallway. Guests turned a corner to encounter the Hunchback of Notre Dame, then navigating through a dark angular passageway that led to a Phantom of the Opera scene. A lady on a wheel was at the end of the hallway. Guests turned a corner and walked down a black and white striped corridor with strobing lights, one of the more prominent moments in the castle. Around the corner, guests came face to face with Frankenstein's monster. From here, the path curved around a dungeon scene, covered with spiders and their webs. This section led into dark caves and into the attraction's final scene, a spiraling vortex tunnel illusion that put guests off balance. The 7,000 square foot building put guests on their own to walk through about 450 feet of winding hallways with ambient lighting and spotlights pointed at scare actors dressed as Count Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, Lizzie Borden, and more. Although the attraction's developer recommended having 17 employees to run the Haunted Castle, Six Flags decided to use 13 employees, up to 10 inside and 3 outside, one of which called a rover who would routinely patrol the interior for misconduct and safety issues. The number of employees on a given day depended on whether or not the two sides were in operation. Both sides were used on busy days, but only one on slow days. The experience lasted between 7 to 9 minutes from beginning to end, accommodating about 1,600 visitors per hour. The The attraction was very much of amusement park quality, especially the building itself. The structure was built from 8 retired aluminum semi-trailers for each side, with a control room in the center of the layout, totaling in 17 interconnected trailers. It had black spray-painted plywood for its ceiling and walls, in addition to other materials being used, such as papier-mâché and fiberglass for various props and sets. A polyurethane pad was installed on the wall at the end of the strobing hallway. This padding was added because of frequent incidents including guests accidentally running into the wall due to the hallway's disorienting effects. After an unbearably hot inaugural season, the Haunted Castle was retrofitted in 1980 with an air conditioning ventilation system and air vents installed in the floor. Around this time, Six Flags hired a fire protection engineer to evaluate the attraction's safety provisions. While the engineer made recommendations such as a sprinkler system, also suggesting smoke and fire detectors as an affordable alternative, the park passed over most of the recommendations, installing only battery-operated smoke detectors that would shortly after be vandalized, broken, and never replaced. By 1981, the building's interior was refurbished. However, the park over the years had ignored numerous safety and cosmetic improvements for the walkthrough attraction, including report findings from an insurance audit. Despite Six Flags investing $21 million across the park a year prior, and the attraction's developer personally offering to refurbish or replace the building, the Haunted Castle in 1984 remained a part of the park's lineup of attractions, now open for its 5th season of operation. Friday, May 11th, 1984. Six Flags Great Adventure then ranked as the 3rd busiest amusement park in the United States, only behind the Disney parks in Florida and California. With the summer season approaching, the park was facing one of the busier days of the year so far. Schools from across the area held field trips at the Six Flags Great Adventure theme park. Dutch rock band Golden Earring was preparing for a concert in the park that evening. Between the teenagers and concertgoers, about 10,000 guests were in the park by evening time. Then, guests outside the Haunted Castle, which had opened for the season approximately a month prior after inspections and was allegedly understaffed that night. Groups of about 10 guests per minute were let in at a time. 2 teenage girls were next in line waiting to enter, and they were split up between 2 groups by an employee, with one going inside the attraction and the other being told to wait with the next group. The girl walking in had second thoughts and gave up her spot. Her friend was then allowed to join the group ahead and enter the attraction into the red side of the building, the only side in operation that day. Guests in front of her used cigarette lighters to illuminate their path, particularly down the long hallway with a strobe light, which had been malfunctioning that day, leaving guests to navigate in complete darkness for periods of time. By the time the girl reached the exit only a few minutes later, she turned around and saw the Haunted Castle across the moat attraction she had just been in was on fire. Had the teenage girl been held back at the entrance as originally instructed, she would have been inside. That was the case, however, for 29 other people. The time was 6:30 p.m., and the structure was quickly going up in flames with people inside. Smoke filled the hallways, choking guests inside. Witnesses say it smelled like toxic materials burning, rather than the typical wood smoke scent. This heavy smoke minimized the already limited visibility in the windowless building. Guests screamed "fire" and fled to any exit they could find. Employees inside, dressed as ghouls and monsters, did their best to clear the building. A group of 4 friends was able to locate an emergency exit at the rear of the building and safely escape, while others frantically rushed out of the Haunted Castle. Meanwhile, as the thick smoke rolled through the hallways, a group of 9 teenagers had been hiding in the Haunted Castle to scare a group behind them as a prank. Clouds of smoke filled the air inside the tight hallways. The teenagers at first thought this was an effect in the castle, but they quickly realized the truth when solid black smoke rolled toward them. Now panic-stricken, they did not know which way to turn as they tried to escape and save their own lives. One teenager in the group, 14-year-old Suzette Elliott, had been separated from the others and was knocked to the ground while guests evacuated from the burning building. As the others scattered, Suzette had been looking for her friend, Tina, and was trying on her own to navigate through the dark maze-like hallways herself. With a bandana covering her mouth and nose, Suzette stopped when she became exhausted from breathing in smoke. Suzette, now kneeling on the ground, could not continue. Gary Kaplow was working outside the attraction that night when rattled guests reported a fire to him. Because of the fake fire lighting effect inside the attraction, guests reported fires every so often. But Kaplow was alarmed when the guests reported the fire in a different location from where the simulated effect was. He knew this was real. With no firefighters on site, Kaplow reacted with instinct and ran into the building. The hallways were buried with smoke while guests continued to evacuate. Kaplow ran in as far as he could and thankfully found Suzette Elliott on the ground near the coffin scene toward the beginning of the attraction. Kaplow, who was familiar with the building, picked up Suzette and carried her in his arms safely out of the burning attraction. She was treated with an oxygen mask once outside. Suzette likely would not have survived if it were not for this employee. Kaplow testified that the staff at this point believed the attraction had been cleared of all guests. In either case, the building was not safe to re-enter as the smoke and flames had become too intense. The air conditioning unit had automatically turned on due to high temperatures, but it would only fan the flames. The fire spread so rapidly that the entire structure was burning within an estimated 4.5 minutes. With the highly combustible structure burning down, temperatures reached an overwhelming 2,000 degrees. Six Flags had 2 firefighters on duty that evening. The Great Adventure Fire Brigade was on the scene at 6:35 p.m. within minutes of the first sign of fire as noticed by an employee. The captain on duty with water pumps and a hose was able to enter the building about 20 feet but had to immediately retreat due to the heat, smoke, and flames. Six Flags security at 6:41 p.m. alerted municipal fire crews from Jackson and surrounding cities. Fire trucks were dispatched, and the first arrived at 6:52 p.m., about 22 minutes after the initial report of a fire. Firefighters now had to control a building that had been completely engulfed by a growing fire, with flames piercing through the roof. Park guests gathered around the scene but were asked to leave as the disaster became more intense. The firefighters, however, were unaware 8 teenagers were still trapped inside, the same 8 who were with Suzette Elliott before being separated. Among the group, Joby Rowdy was slightly ahead of the other 7. The rest were on the ground about 20 feet from an emergency exit, with their faces pressed up against an air conditioning vent on the floor for fresh air. No one was able to come to their rescue. The remaining 8 guests inside died due to severe smoke inhalation and carbon monoxide poisoning. The victims were all between just 15 and 19 years old. Cassville Fire Chief John W. Quebec said, quote, "By the time our men got there, the thing was totally involved, and there was no way to save the thing or anybody. We didn't know people were in the building. There was no way you could even go to them if you knew. They died of suffocation before the fire company even got there. That's my feeling." Unquote. 15 fire crews arrived at the Haunted Castle that night. The 200 total firefighters and rescue squad workers from 11 surrounding communities took about 70 minutes to extinguish the fire, officially under control at 7:41 p.m. Nearby rides were still in operation with screens from parkgoers adding to the ambience. That night, park officials closed the park to guests 2 hours early at 8 p.m. Six Flags offered a free return ticket to everyone in attendance. The park opened the next day. Crews continued through the night to inspect the rubble and partially melted semi-trailer structure. They spent hours searching the remains of the building, examining burned props and mannequins, unfortunately discovering 8 bodies in the debris. Police Commissioner Richard Boris of the local township said, quote, "Initially, we thought they were mannequins, but then we discovered they were bodies," unquote. At 10:45 p.m., officials confirmed the heartbreaking deaths that occurred. The bodies had not yet been identified. The park and local authorities received hundreds of calls from worried parents whose children had not come home. Buses of children left the property earlier in the evening, the head counts were off for many buses, and people wanted answers.
Let me stop that one. So the so to kind of get a sense of what it was that this was constructed of 17 metal trailers, so 8 and 8 interconnected with the control rooms, which totaled 17. So they were aluminum trailers. They had plywall partitions to feed you through the attraction. It had fiberglass, it had foam rubber insulation, and tar paper and paper mache. It was constructed 5 years earlier, and it was only supposed to be up for that one season. So it was deemed a temporary structure. And so there wasn't any fire inspection of it from the official capacity of the fire inspector for the county in New Jersey. So you have aluminum, plywood, and an air conditioning system. And then you have people walking around with lighters and it just ignited, and horrible tragedy. And so it created this complex maze where they didn't know where the emergency exits were. It didn't have sprinklers. It didn't have wired fire alarms or smoke detectors. And so in 1984, when the fire erupted, it erupted right near the Hunchback display. And the flames just went through the air conditioning ductwork in through the vents, and it just ignited. And what's horrible is that there was this fire, but the Six Flags didn't close the park. They let the park keep going. They let people still being there. They just closed off the section of where the Haunted Castle was. Sure, they closed a little bit early, but still they allowed visitors to be there. They didn't know that there were these 8 teenagers within the building. And when they were inspecting it the next day, they thought they were mannequins. They thought they were skeletons from the props. And it was only as they were working through them, they realized that it was human bones. And they actually had a hard time identifying or separating the corpses because they were so badly burned. So I really thought he did a really good job in showing us some archived footage and talking through how the park was. And so you have this temporary structure that didn't have any type of inspection, and it's being built by materials that are highly flammable. And with the lighter, that just, I think that just is awful. And so there was a trial because there was a criminal investigation, and it was against Six Flags Corporation, and also some managers within the park were also charged. During the trial, the fire inspector testified that this structure was they had labeled it a temporary structure, so it didn't call for all of these inspections, didn't require them to have the smoke detectors and the fire alarms and the sprinkler system. And even though it was there for 5 years, like it was like this open secret, right, that there's this structure there, but it's because it was incredibly popular. It wasn't removed, it wasn't replaced, and it wasn't closed because it brought in people and it generated money. And so sadly, for a criminal trial, the burden of proof is much higher. So the burden wasn't met. And so Six Flags was actually found not guilty of, they were charged with aggravated manslaughter and recklessly endangering and causing these deaths. And they were found not guilty. But the civil case has a lower standard. And they actually, there was a settlement where 7 of the 8 actually settled and paid out a couple $1 million per family. The 8th family went to trial, and the trial judgment was for $750,000. But it shouldn't have never happened. It shouldn't have happened at all. And so when you're looking at or considering, do you want to have a haunted house? Is it a haunted house or is it a liability pit? Because it's a business, and people they see it as fun, they see it as entertainment, but they don't realize that you not only do you need to set up business license and make sure that you're following all of your city ordinance, the municipal ordinances, county ordinances, state ordinances, but screen your volunteers, staff it. It was understaffed. It was supposed to have 17. They had like 13, but one guy was roaming around. So it was really like 12. And that's just horrible. And then inspect the premises. Make sure that it's safe. It has everything that it requires. And the thing that came out of this the criminal charges with the trial and the civil trial was that the law changed. which happens a lot when there's these tragedies and we see this reckless endangerment of people's lives, is that the law changed so that you have to have fire and smoke detectors, even if they're in special amusement buildings. And so there is a special provision. It's called the Life Safety Code for special provision or general provisions for special amusement buildings. And it brought about these changes. Then ensure that you're following all of these safety features. That's why we have the lit floor, so people don't take out their lighters and have butane, a live flame in a building that's gonna just highly flammable. We have make sure you have exits. Everything's clearly marked. Maintain insurance. I think this is probably what causes a lot of charities not to have haunted houses, is the cost involved just to carry a policy in case something does happen, because you can't really place a dollar amount on a human life. Juries try to, right? But it's just unimaginable. And follow the law. Follow the law. Don't be tempted by the cash cow of the haunted house and skimp all of these things. And this wasn't a charity. This was Six Flags. This was still a major operator of amusement parks, third largest in the 80s when this happened. They should have known better, and they didn't. And so think of a small charity in a town. How much would they know? Would they be as business savvy to know all of these things to host this? And this is actually a private haunted house in a town, and it looks awesome. But I want to make sure that they have exits, extinguishers, liability insurance. And so I don't think it is worth it to have the haunted house. I think that you should probably stick to bake sales, really. But I don't know. $300 billion, I think, is what the number is for amusement parks, because it's big money. It's huge money. And I'm sorry I didn't do haunted houses that are actually haunted.
No, that's okay.
I didn't even think of that. I was like, wow. And then I went down a rabbit hole of like a little side story. And if you're ever in Florida and you're in Sarasota, visit the Ringling Museum, the Circus Museum. It's fabulous. But when I was a little girl and we would come up from Fort Myers, and I don't know if we were with a school group or if I was with Girl Scouts. I don't know what group I was with touring, but there was, we were in the Circus Museum part, and it has, Casa d'Azah is the house, and it's gorgeous. It's an Italian villa. They have a proper or a very high fine art museum, which has $1 million paintings, but they also have the Circus Museum, which is the circus. And walking around in the corner of the museum, like they would have the carousels and just everything. It was just, circus. Mm-hmm. But in the corner, there was this newspaper article, and it was about a fire under the Big Top. And it was the story of a girl whose body was never claimed by her family and died during it. And I just remember I was traumatized by the concept of a fire under the Big Top. And then no one in her family came to claim her body. Years later, they did discover and link who she was, but it was like, how did that happen? And so I've never liked the circus since then. I don't go. I don't like it. I'm not really a carnival person, but I can tell you, after watching the YouTube video on the Haunted Castle, I will never get into a Hall of Mirrors or anything that's in an aluminum tractor trailer ever again.
Yeah. And actually, the Ringling, you brought that up. That's in my next book that I'm finishing up right now on haunted roadside attractions, because it is haunted.
And it's beautiful to go into, and and I love the movie The Greatest Showman, right? Mm-hmm. and talking about in the circus and the art of illusion, and there's a sucker born every minute because we love escapism. That's why we love movies. We love to be scared, because if we're frightened in our own setting or under our own terms, I'm in a horror movie, I know it's a movie, I can be scared, but I know I can walk out. I know this is not my reality. We like that because it's very comfortable. And Stephen King he wrote an essay about how we should be scared, have these moments of being scared, because it exercises our emotions and gets our adrenaline, so that if we're ever in an instance where we need to, the fear, flight or fight kind of thing, that the adrenaline and stuff, and experience that. And so horror movies are the perfect way to practice it, not enjoy it, but experience it. But that's why horror movies are so popular. That's why these attractions are so popular. Yep. Then add just the aspect of how the layers of the folklore and the stories and the storytelling, and add that to it. And Halloween is the number one holiday financially in the world, because of just decorating your house, your costumes, your candy. And like usually every year I do a blog on what's the most popular candy and the candy of your state. And I'm always disappointed in the state I live in, because it's like, what? No, good and plenty? I don't think so. But we like that. And haunted houses are they're fun and exciting, but make sure you're being safe.
Yeah. Go to Halloween Horror Nights instead.
Yeah, right. On their liability insurance, because they're going to have the sprinklers and so forth. But
and they're not temporary structures. They actually take you through the rides,
right,
in the backstage buildings.
Shame on them. And I haven't read any documents of the trial to see why or how they didn't meet the burden. I'm just being like one of those armchair viewers, the armchair jurist who's saying, how did you not find them guilty? Right? It wasn't a temporary structure. It should have stopped there. But
see, and that doesn't surprise me, because I remember going to Six Flags in Chicago. And it was always it was still a lot of fun, and the rides were great, and the entertainment was fun, but there was always just something that didn't quite feel, I guess you would say, professional. At the location. So it was one of those. So that doesn't surprise me that happened at a Six Flags.
Yeah. And I think that and it's sad, because I do think that, especially in Florida, Disney World and Universal have definitely killed the roadside attractions. Definitely killed the small little seaquariums kind of thing, which is sad, because those are fun, and they can be more accessible, more educational. But now, people want to come to Florida and they want to experience Disney or Universal, and it's like, no, go to the museum, go to the history center. And that's a shame. But also, I'll be driving on the interstate and I'll see some roadside attraction in Georgia, and I'm like, who is going there? Right. I mean, I'm driving by and it's like, God, that looks like rust. And also, like, last year, the one dad who was taking the picture of one carnival ride that had rust on it, and he's like zooming in, and it's like, is that rust? And then they shut it down. Oh gosh.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to write the book that I'm working on right now, because it covers even, all the ones that are no longer in existence, the roadside attractions, everything from, and it's funny, in Florida, what's listed under roadside attractions are a lot of cemeteries.
It's just like, no, that's not an attraction.
So I'm like, oh, it works for my book, but it's not something I would do. I would do it on a vacation, but not something a family would do.
Yeah. And it's like in Tampa, Fairyland, St. Fairyland, when they, that was cute, and it was corny. It was the 70s and the 80s kind of thing. And it wasn't dangerous, or you didn't think it was. And then all of a sudden it just takes this, cutting corners somewhere.
Yep. Yeah. Because they got to compete. When you only charge $10 or $20 per person to get in versus $100.
Yeah.
you got to compete somehow.
And I was thinking about that also today in terms of ticket prices. You know, you just read articles about families who save up for a whole year to go to Disney, and it's like the History Museum in Gainesville is free. You can pay a little extra and see some butterflies, and it's worth it. Worth it.
Yeah, because I know when we worked for Disney, my husband and I both worked for Disney, so we were there all the time because we got in for free. But when we left, we haven't been back since, outside of downtown Disney for shopping, or it's Disney Springs now.
Yeah, I was, because I used to work for him too, and would be there, drive over on I-4 all the time, and then we took my daughter once when she was little, and she was like, I don't need to go back. And I'm like, I love you.
Oh no, our son was a little tour guide. He overheard someone say, hey, where's this? And he actually went up to him, sir, it's over that way. When he was real little, because he knew his way around the parks because we were there so often. I mean, you know, it's like, what else? It's free it was free for us, and we'd go after work, you know, just before, you know, after dinner and watch the fireworks and then go home.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, when you're getting in free, you're not anymore though. But that was, I don't know why they decided to do that, but okay. But yeah, it's just, and I think it's also different too, because Florida is so touristy in the different areas that things are built up. And so there is more professionalism. There is more money spent into the attractions. But then when you get into the Midwest, as you're driving west, it doesn't. And so I think there is, you know, it's almost the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of thing where, yeah, sure, let's go into that house, you know, and knock on the door and see.
Well, it's like, what were we thinking back in the day? Sure, let's go down this eerie road with no lights at midnight.
Now we don't even have telephone booths to run to.
I know. So if your phone doesn't work, you're kind of screwed. You
are so screwed. But it is fascinating in terms of England with the steam, with the I didn't realize, because I don't, you know, I love history, and I don't really kind of track the time when things happen. And so I guess it's kind of like young people are like, what do you mean you didn't have a cell phone when you were young? Yeah, we didn't. But steam engine, and I love how they created this ghost cottage with the steam to have these things work. And it's so simple. It's kind of, you know, whereas I think you can have an effective attraction outside, not in a structure, and do some very simple, just apply some physics to some things to create. You don't have to be so complex.
Right.
And you can keep it affordable, and you can make it fun. Excuse me, but it's just, don't make it a house. Don't go in there. That's a lot of money to invest into something. So I was very surprised that there were still JCs actually having these fundraisers, because it just seems that if you don't have the structure, and I read an article, also I was researching this about this. It's a small company, and they put on like the haunted house type of thing, not to the extent of like Netherworld or anything, but they lost the building, the structure that they used, because I think a lot of people who own these structures also don't want to take on the burden of the liability and have it in there. And but it is I guess it might be, you know, a nice thing to put into the strip center that's vacant. I don't know. Yeah. If it's a business. But I can't imagine what the liability insurance is for them to maintain, like to do these every year and be safe about it.
Yeah. I know we've looked into just liability insurance to do tours.
Yeah.
And, you know, ours would be a 1-year contract, but I'm sure these groups only do it for 2-3 months, maybe max.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, when you do it short term, it's more expensive.
So, yeah, just go visit some. Go visit. Don't.
say now that I've seen that, I don't want to go visit one.
Well, and that's how I feel. I'm like, no, not at all. And what we talked about a little earlier, and I'm not going to go see the Exorcist movie. I'm just gonna stay home and, I don't know.
Yeah, I never even watched the first Exorcist, so I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
It was nominated for an Oscar. It was the first horror movie ever nominated for an Oscar.
I know. I was never into horror movies. I watched maybe one of Halloween, 1 or 2 Friday the 13th, and then I think about 2 or 3, I think, of the Nightmare on Elm Streets. I like the cheesy horror movies, like Pandemonium, The Toxic Avenger.
Dale and Tucker Save.
Yeah.
What is it? I love that movie.
Yeah,
that's my kind of horror movie.
I love the ones that make you laugh. So you feel better.
Yeah,
so you're not always on the edge of your seat.
Oh, and of course I can't think of it now. Simon Pegg's zombie movie in England. Hot Fuzz is not it, but another one he wrote. But yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day in terms of the book versus a movie, and how so often that the movie is not faithful to the a faithful adaptation of the book, because it can't be, because the book's much bigger, and there's more development. It's not the formula. But I would say Rosemary's Baby I actually enjoyed better than the story.
Okay,
that was a good movie.
Yeah, I've yet to find a movie that I like better than the book. And Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer is the only one that comes close,
really,
to beating the book, because they did I think they really did a good job of the movie, and they followed the story as close as possible.
Yeah,
which you don't see very often.
No, because they can't, because you have 90 minutes usually, and you just got to get it all. You have to get it all in there, and it's kind of like the adaptations of the rides into a movie. Like, no, the ride's better. I don't need to know the backstory of the Haunted Mansion. I don't need to know the backstory of the Pirates of the Caribbean. I really don't. I just want to enjoy the ride. If I'm going, and I'm not going, so we're good.
Yep. Yeah, no, the Haunted Mansion was better than I think any movie that they could have ever created.
Really? Yeah.
And they did it. It's just, and they tell you the backstory while you're going through. So it's like,
yeah. My favorite ride.
Even before you enter the ride, they tell you the backstory.
Oh yeah. Is your, for the hour that you're standing in line to get in and see everything. And even though I haven't been in many, many years, it's still my favorite ride. I would always just look at it, and I always wanted to live in a house that was the Haunted Mansion.
Yep. Yeah, I always like reading the tombstones as you walk through the outside queue.
Oh, it's so clever, right? So you're laughing, and it's just it's just fun. It's fun, but that's how you should do it.
Yep.
So yeah. Any questions or?
No questions, but if anyone has any questions before we go, just feel free to ask. But Connie did mention we have a great haunted walk, Dead by Dawn, at Calusa Natural Center.
Calusa.
Calusa.
Connie! Oh my God, Connie! Hi,
Connie! It took you long enough. But I like how she has it. It's a walking trail. That's kind of interesting.
The Calusa Nature Center is gorgeous in Fort Myers. We used to have field trips there growing up, and they have a really nice planetarium. If you're looking, I'm going to plug you, Connie. We give money every year because of Connie, and the animals and just the preservation, and it's so Florida. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Actually, Connie, if you could share the website, I'll make sure I put it across the screen before we go, if she's still here. But then when we were talking about movies, she mentioned Zombievers.
I've never seen that. I gotta write that down. That just sounds fun. How could it not be fun? Zombievers. Oh God, that is so funny.
Yeah, and then Courtney earlier, I'm just going through all the comments that had been made during JC's. question. Nick liked your graphics.
Oh, thank you.
He and then he said the spook houses of the 40s and 50s. And Courtney, if you're still watching, hello. And she said she has a Ringling Museum up by her as well in Wisconsin, or up in Wisconsin as well.
Yeah.
And then here is the website for the museum if you guys want to go check it out. I know that's on my bucket list of things to do before we move to the East Coast.
Yeah, and I was worried when Ian came through because I was so sad about the animals that were killed on Sanibel, and I always worry about the animals.
But Zombie Roses, it can't be fun, but love the Sinatra style theme song.
Oh, okay. That's my next movie I'm watching. Thanks, Connie.
Oh, but yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. And then if you guys have any questions, if you're watching the replay, ask and I'll make sure I get them over to Lisa and we'll get the answered for you. And I know we were talking before we even went live about future presentations, and I thought of something while you were talking. Excellent. Is a presentation on almost like paranormal tourism, but traveling into foreign countries such as the Paris catacombs or into foreign countries for paranormal exploration. And how to be safe, because everybody just thinks you go and you're good, but sometimes traveling to foreign countries is not the best option.
No, it's not. And so a little plug, because I was thinking of some things. So if any of you watch Tubi, the free TV station, and I'm sure my husband's listening to me now because it's so funny because I plug it everywhere. Tubi, Scariest Places in the World. You can actually see me on it. They profile 10 locations throughout the world as being the scariest, and 7 of them I'm actually talking on. And it's probably about 20 people that they actually get commentary from. So it's about an hour and a half movie. It's a docu-movie, and it's fabulous about scariest places in the world. And one of them is the Capuchin catacombs, and the ecotourism, the paratourism would be perfect. And I can talk about the Capuchin catacombs because I want to go. Never been, but I think I actually might have relatives who are buried there. Would be really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to be. I'm going to have to check that out. What was the name of it?
It's Scariest Places in the World.
Okay.
And it's a fantastic production. I can tell you that the production company, Streetcar Entertainment up in Knoxville, Tennessee, A+. If anybody out there ever gets an invite or an email from them to be involved in any of their productions, please do it. They are fabulous. They are great to work with. I loved every minute of it, and it was just a lot of fun. And it was just talking about a lot of great places in the world that are also scary, but more on the safe side because they are more well-known types of places. But you can still find yourself in trouble in those as well.
Yep. Yeah, because it's funny. I mean, even when we take our cruises to Mexico, it's even though you can book your own tours or go off on your own and rent a car and do your own thing, we've always made sure that we did the tour through the cruise line because then the cruise line knows where you're at.
Yes. And they know when because they've got the log and everything. And I remember taking a cruise on Holland America 20 plus years ago, and they stopped at one of their ports was Venezuela. They don't do it anymore. And before we're disembarking and getting off, they're making announcements on only do tours through the cruise. And of course people think, oh, they're going to charge me more and it's a racket kind of thing. And it was safety issues. And they actually said over the loudspeaker, do not go to the shopping mall, name the shopping mall. And of course some passengers went to the shopping mall and they got robbed. And of course, in the comment card, I'm like, why did we stop here? What are you thinking? And we went up into the rainforest and it was, the cruise part was very nice, but, listen to them, only do it through because like you said, and they're licensed. It's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of running the haunted house. They've got the liability insurance. That's the extra you're paying for is so that you return to the cruise alive.
Right. And they know what they're doing. The cruise vetted them, so it's not like, just because because I'm in several cruise groups on Facebook, and I see people who complain that they've been robbed or they missed their boat leaving the port because they got off the boat and hailed a cab.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can never do that. Or they'd even say, hey, if you want to get off the boat, the shopping mall is, the shopping area is right across the port. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll stay on the boat.
Yeah, exactly. Or the stores they recommend or what they recommend and everything. Yep. But I wrote that down. I will do the paratourism.
Okay, cool. And getting back to Tubi, it's funny because Tubi is actually almost turned into almost like a paranormal network because there's so many great paranormal shows on there. I know the documentary, shameless plug on my end, the documentaries we were in are aired on Tubi.
It's actually giving Travel Channel a run for their money. Mm-hmm. And I think that when they went to the pay format for the travel channel and all of the other things, a lot of people like, I don't pay for it. If I don't catch it on regular TV, then I'm not seeing it. And I watch very little cable paranormal shows. In fact, I don't watch any right now. I watch Tubi. Mm-hmm. I like Tubi because it's free and their productions are, and it's professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like I said, it was fabulous to work with them. And they were, they paid for everything for me. It was like that. That's what you want in terms of, it wasn't like, hey, can you get up here in Knoxville on your own dime? And it was like, no, they paid for everything. And I loved it. And they were just so pleasant to work with, and the product that they came up with and just everything. And I think they have a really good, they understand the interest in the paranormal and the viability of that as free programming.
Right.
And they're doing it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so hard to find. And it's really sad. I know we talked about a little bit about how, social media is ruining things. And YouTube, it has a lot of good information on there. I use YouTube a lot and we air on YouTube, but they need to have like disclaimers on half of the stuff. Because some of it is, illegal that some of these ghost hunters are doing, or, it is entertainment. And people who are new to the field, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, they don't know.
No,
they don't. See it on YouTube and think it's CNN, and it's news.
Right. And they don't understand who, it's like follow the money. Mm-hmm. And if it's being made for entertainment value, then it's the truth. There are some incredibly scary stories out there of hauntings, but to be able to capture it, the instant that you're there, on investigations, we go through so much footage, we listen to so much, and it's like the odds of you being there at the right moment when the voices are gonna come through are very slim. And it's not because, and other people are like, oh, well, it's haunted, they should be talking all the time. And it's like, well, that's really not how it works.
No, I've been doing this for more than 35 years. I have probably a dozen EVPs in 35 years. And 2 photos and nothing on video.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, I've only seen a full-bodied apparition once. Mm-hmm. Maybe twice, but once is the only one that I cannot remember. Right. And I wasn't even on an investigation. I was voting a polling place. Yeah. Which was weird. Right. And so it's not that easy. If it was easy, there would be evidence all over the place. Yep. But also it's the collection of evidence in that they're trying to make it fit into science and the protocols of a biologist or the protocols of, or, just within a field. And this is a different field. And so, they don't do the disclaimers. And then, gosh, they just do stupid stuff and dangerous stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. And my favorite was in Rhyolite, someone shot a video of them stepping over a chain with a huge no trespassing sign. and they were stepping over it to go into where it said no trespassing to get video.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, really?
Yeah. And
yeah. And I know they were turned in by several people to the police. A lot of people sent the video footage to the state troopers. Because it's like, if you're going to, not to condone trespassing, but if you're going to, why are you going to put the evidence on YouTube? Well, it's the other thing.
Criminals are not smart. So, for the most part, not smart. But yeah, and call and get permission, or you know, there are ways to do it, or there's other places to go. But and then they think then they mix like marijuana and, you know, like to heighten the experience, and then the plantations burn down. And it's like, what? You just ruined history, and you ruined it for the rest of us.
Exactly. Yeah. That's sad. But you know, I guess, you know, to each their own. The weekend warriors think that they can do it, but yeah.
Very disappointing.
Well, it looks like there's no more questions, so I'm not sure if you had anything else you wanted to say, or if you were good to go, or.
No, sadly, I don't really have any posts going on because I've got a lot going on in my not my personal life, but my work life, and so I just hadn't been feeling it. But I'm gonna get back in writing some blogs and posting some materials. I'm feeling the holidays might put me into the writing mood. And so yeah, but I read like all of the news coming out. So
oh, that reminds me. Did you ever look into that cave of coffins that we talked about?
No, I did not. But let me write that down. Gosh, I know I'm bad. I wrote it down. I'll look into it.
Because I know I've just done quick Google searches on it. I haven't done a deep dive into it yet, but I'm kind of curious as to what that is.
Yeah, and if anybody actually has any ideas or would like to see some articles or some further research or a deep dive on any subjects, feel free to email me. Go to my blog, thehauntedlibrarian.com, post some comments, and I will definitely start researching, because I gotta love research. It's so fun. I love the stories.
Yeah, that's the fun part about it. So thehauntedlibrarian.com, I'm actually going to put that in the comments real quick. Anyone wants to go to that, check it out. But I do appreciate you joining us today. As always, love the information. You taught me something new today.
Thanks, Heather.
Even though we haven't been to a carnival in a while, I don't think I'm going to go to one.
Yeah, I'm good.
But before we go, if you guys want to, make sure you follow us on Facebook at Ghost Education 101, and you can watch this replay as well as all of our other replays. I think you've done like 5 shows for us.
Yeah.
And you're all listed there, and that is on YouTube at Ghost Education 101. Make sure you subscribe so that way you get updates on when we go live and when new videos are posted. Then in 2 weeks, Philip Wyatt will be returning as my co-host, and he is doing a presentation on rescue mediumship. That is going to be a fun and interesting presentation. And then in 2 weeks after that, on November 8th, make sure you mark your calendars, because we will be joined by Kevin, who is doing a discussion about trauma after paranormal encounters. He is a psychologist and does a whole bunch of different work helping paranormal people or paranormal encounter after even physical attacks from the paranormal or any type of interactions. He helps them get through that and all the trauma associated with it. So that is going to be a fun visit. But again, everyone, thank you for joining us, and thank you for the presentation. And I'll make sure I get you on the calendar for next year, and we will see you soon.
Thanks.